A very good evening, a warm welcome to Dan Really Likes Wine, presented by Pick and Pay. And a slightly bittersweet evening. I'm a little sad, to be honest, because today marks the end of what has been 3 weeks, 6 live shows of a rollicking ride through the Swartland. And I have to confess, it was an area of the winemaking world, part of the South African wine map, that I thought I knew reasonably well. But I've discovered over the last 6 shows, or last 5 shows, and I'm sure I will again today, that there is so much to be learned, not just about the wine, and geez, I've had some thunderously good wine over the last little while, but also about the people. And it's the kind of thing you can say is a throwaway line because it sounds rather romantic, and you can put it in the PR and write it in the magazine articles that it is an area made by its people. But I genuinely come to believe that. Some extraordinary characters, some warm-hearted, generous people, and almost without exception, everybody I've spoken to has referenced the Swartland, the community, the people in it as being so inherent to the success that a particular wine brand or wine estate has had. And it's just been so much fun. And what it's done now has made me decide top of my list when I get traveling again, whenever that may be, is to get down to the Cape, get out to the Swartland and spend some time visiting in person the places that I've been visiting virtually over the last few weeks. And we've had some terrific journeys, and as I say, some lovely wine. And we wrap up on something of a high. We'll be heading out to Malmesbury just a little bit later and meeting a guy called Wim, who makes a range of wine called the Renosterbos from the Hof Street Winery. Is it actually in Hof Street? Is it really in the CBD of Malmesbury? And what is the story behind the wine, in particular Myrtledeen, the red blend, which looks fascinating? We'll find that out very shortly. But before we do that, we've got a man to speak to about a pig, because that pig inspires the name of one of the wines. In fact, the wine that we'll be trying today, it's an estate that's got some really cool, minimalist, funky designs, and a wine that's got a lot of fans. When I put this up online yesterday, Melu Lambert, the acclaimed and esteemed wine writer, immediately fired back, "I love that Syrah," and that Syrah is what I am going to be trying. So let's go straight over to Intellego Wines and a wine called Kolbroek, and say a very good afternoon in the Swartland, where I don't think he's got any power, so we're lucky to have him, to Jurgen Goop. Jurgen, good evening, welcome.
Hi Dan, how's it? Thanks for having me. And yeah, pretty pity about the load shedding, but we're surviving, we're coping, so that's cool.
There's never been a year quite like 2020 for the South Africans will make a plan, has there, Jurgen?
No, I think in future it will be one of those years where you'll just be like, no, I just want to forget 2020. But with, like us South Africans, we always make a plan. We always try to see the light at the end of the tunnel. And if it's not COVID, it's load shedding, and if it's not load shedding, who else what it is. But yeah, we at the end of the day, we just try and see that light at the end of the tunnel and make the best of it. And yeah, I think we're tough. We're a pretty tough nation, which is quite cool, and quite cool to be part of that nation and also making wines in this country, which is great. So yeah, it's awesome.
Let me ask you on that note then a question I normally leave to the end of a conversation with people, particularly at the moment. You talk about 2020 and its downsides. There are many of them, but there also is the upside from many people I've spoken to in the wine industry that 2020 is shaping up to be a rather special vintage.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's still early days, especially when it comes to the reds. I've learned in the past that normally you need to give the red wines quite a few years, to age and see actually, the potential. But so far for me with the whites and all the lighter style wines, it's really been a great year. I think it's amazing. We had really great conditions. Harvest, it wasn't too warm. We had perfect cool nights during harvest, so grapes could cool down, retain good acidity, and I think there's also a lot of good freshness in the grapes. And this year when I harvest my grapes, it just felt like there was a bit more of a balance between the pH and the acidity, and also we could play a bit more around. We had more time to work on the ripeness, and also a bit more hanging time out there. So we never really had that extreme heat wave, which we normally have around February or maybe end of January. So I think we were pretty lucky in that sense. And yes, I must say I'm maybe a bit more excited about the 2020s than the 2019 so far. But on the other hand, every year is also very special and unique, and that's a good thing. And I think as a winemaker, I know in Europe it's extreme, where they have like extreme years. Where in South Africa maybe not as extreme because of the climate. It's a bit more consistent here. But yeah, looking really forward to see what 2020 has in tact for us, and how the wines will deliver. But very promising at the moment, and enjoying it, and very happy about the quality at the moment. So.
If not a silver lining, then a burgundy coloured lining, perhaps, to the general cloud that is 2020. Let's leave 2020 for now, as I wish we could have done a while back, and head back in time to 2017, jump into our Michael J. Fox DeLorean, and head through to the wine we're going to be trying with you today, and that is the Kolbroek. And I'm interested in two things, first of all, Jürgen. One of them is the artwork on the label, which is seriously cool. And the other is the name, Kolbroek. Let's start with the label. Who's responsible for that, and what inspired it?
Okay, so I need to explain the whole story to you. So basically, it first, so back in, actually I started Kolbroek in 2012. And at that stage, I felt like I really wanted to make a wine with the Afrikaans name, because, that's my native language. And I'm very proud of that. And then I worked on a farm where they actually had a lot of these Vietnamese pot-belly pigs. And the ones that's normally the white ones with the black spots on the hams, they are normally called the Kolbroek. So we had quite a few of them. And one day somebody just told me, they actually are called Kolbroek pigs, which was really interesting. And I loved the name. And it also went down well in English, because at the end of the day, you need to have a name for wine that, most nationalities can pronounce, which I think is also very important. So I just liked the name from the beginning. And then normally I don't like to use animals or stuff on my labels, or as a label, pictures of the animals. So then I started playing around, and Intellego, the logo for Intellego is actually the scale, or the Libra. So one day I had a pallet of bottles stored on top of a container, and just to make sure that everybody knew it was mine, I just took spray paint and I spray painted the logo of Intellego on the pallet. And then as days passed by, and I would every time if I would walk past the pallet, it started looking more like a kind of like a stick figure than the scale. And that's where the idea came that maybe I can combine the name Kolbroek with the stick figure. And that's why you will see on the label, there's a stick figure with his pants, and then there's a red spot on his pants. And I mean, if you translate it directly to Afrikaans, that's a Kolbroek. So there's basically a kool on your broek. It's a spot on your pants. So that's how we brought the whole thing together. But also with all the labels that I work with Intellego, in every label, you'll see the scale. So, whether it's a window frame, or whether it's part of the umbrella with the elementis, or I've got one, the Intellego Siron and Intellego Shannon, where there's a guy doing graffiti on this one old abandoned house, and there's also the scale on it. So in every label of my wines, of all the labels, the scale is hidden somewhere, because for me, at the end of the day, it's all about equilibrium, and it's to find that balance between what we do out there in the vineyards, and then also what we do in the winery. So always trying to find that perfect balance, which I guess we'll never find, and which is fine. So that for me was very important. That's where that stick figure comes from, because it's actually a scale, and that's how we combined the name and then the label, the logo as well. So yeah.
It almost seems to me like there is an unspoken creative competition in the Swartland. If we look at Craig and his collection of obscure photographs at Testalonga, we look at the artwork on City and on a hill that's coming through. There's a lot of you guys who, yes, you do wonderful things with your wine, but you clearly have a lot of fun and put a lot of effort into making sure the aesthetic is very special as well.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of creativity. And I think the cool thing about the Swartland is that there's a lot of people that's actually who's making wine in the Swartland is actually didn't grow up in the Swartland, and they're not from the Swartland. So I think there's a lot of fresh ideas that came into this region, and I think that's one of the reasons why it's so unique, this region, when we make the wines. And also there's a lot of good young energy in this region. So people travel a lot. There's well-traveled people. I think we travel all over the world. We get a lot of ideas. And then at the end of the day, we bring it back. And the nice thing in the Swartland also is there's a good camaraderie where we can just sit together and share ideas among each other, whether it's at parties or at tastings and stuff. So there's a good feel here. And I think we've also realized early on that it's very important that as a region, it makes more sense for us to work together and to build in Swartland, and that way, our wines will get more, will be knowledge internationally wise, and it's not a case of competing with your neighbor and stuff, but I think that also brings out a lot of creativity. And for instance, if I work for somebody and I see their labels and it inspires me, or like for instance Craig Hawkins, I worked with him for a few years, and what he did really inspired me, and then I went on and tried to create my own identity, but thanks to Craig, because it's almost like this, you get this inspiration from somewhere, but then you go out there and try to be creative and stamp off your own identity. And that's definitely one thing that you get in the Swartland, which is cool, and the people are also not afraid to just experiment and try different things and maybe move a bit away from the classical traditional way. So I think, and there's a variation of all of that, and that's a great thing about the Swartland, which is very enjoyable, and it's nice to share that among the people.
It's garnered you a lot of fans. David Retief dropping in, Jurgen Leckerman. Craig does love an obscure photograph. I think that's been well established. You also mentioned there the international acclaim, and Greg Sherwood, dressed in a second-hand London Welsh jersey, has also stuck his head out from the Decanter Awards, dipping out of the Decanter World Wine Awards to watch. Just love the Intellego Wine, Syrah to die for. Greg, our regional chair of the Decanter Awards. I know it's not why you make wine. You don't think, oh, if I make this, I might get some lovely stickers on my bottle. But it is nice both for you yourself as a winemaker, as a human being, and for the Swartland as a whole, to be increasingly getting recognized, not just by your immediate peers, but by people around the world going, you know what, this is pretty good wine.
Yes, because look, for me at the end of the day, there's nothing beats the fact if somebody comes up to me and they tell me, listen, we had your wine last night, we had a bottle, we drank it, we love it. I would rather have that than enter my wines into competitions and then, I get a gold or a double gold or whatever, or a high rating. For me, it's not about ratings and stuff. It's about the individual, the guy out there, and also for the people to enjoy it. And at the end of the day, wine brings people together. And if the Intellego wines can do that and bring a lot of people together and for people to enjoy the wines and stuff and to share, then I'm more than happy, instead of me maybe just trying to get the awards for the wines and just enter it for those kind of things. So yeah, I think it's about sharing. Wine is about sharing. It's about bringing people together. I love what I do. I enjoy making the wines. And like I said, there's nothing better than somebody comes up to you, they send you a mail and say, listen, we really love the wine. And I'm pretty sure it's like if you work in a restaurant and you're a chef, and at the end of the night, normally when the chefs, they do their rounds and they go past all the tables and they just introduce themselves, and and it's always nice to also to tell them that you love the food, how great it was. And I think that same feeling is is the one with the wines, and which I really enjoy. So it's just always great to see the smile on the people's face. And especially in a country where it's so complicated and there's so much shit happening and stuff, it's actually great, where you can just if you can just play a small part in somebody's life and on that specific day, just to bring out more enjoyment in their life. And I think that's amazing. And that's for me, that's what wine is all about. It's about sharing, it's about enjoying it, and it's bringing people together. And so I hope I can, I hope we will achieve that. So
you mentioned sharing 3 times. Now I can take a hint, Jurgen. Let's share some wine. Jurgen said, why have we not tried any of my wine yet? What is wrong with Dan? Doesn't he like it? Well, I'm about to climb into it. A 2017 Swartland Syrah. If both Melu Lambert and Greg Sherwood have told me they love it, then this is going to be the kind of stuff that Michael Freejohn would bath in. So let's give it a crack. Oh, I might need to buy a few cases just to be absolutely sure, Jurgen. But no.
You can buy a pallet as well, so it's fine.
Put it on my account, G Sherwood. It's needless to say, it's lovely. It doesn't need my endorsement there. It's got it from plenty of people who know far more about wine than I do. But what I think is worth talking about, aside from its obvious loveliness, is the style of it and an area of the wine. We know Shannon drives so much of Swartland appreciation around the world. but people are starting to realize increasingly that there's more than just Chenin Blanc to the Swartland. There's some really nice wine, and in particular, the drier red styles, the slightly lighter red styles, seems to be a space, as this wine would evidence, where the Swartland is really hitting its stride.
Yeah, I think also for me, obviously, like I said just before, it's like the nice thing in the Swartland is everybody's got their own identity and their own style and stuff, and which they're trying to live out, and you'll see it in their wines, which is amazing and awesome. So there's no pressure of like there's a certain style that we have to make in the Swartland. And for me, the Kolbroek, for instance, or the Shiraz is I prefer the much more elegant styles when it comes to red wines, and I think with Shiraz, it's quite easy to achieve that in the Shiraz wines, because of the grape. Its ageability is great, but at the same time, it doesn't need a lot of time, whether it's in a barrel or bottle to age. So over a shorter period, you can already see how the wines will evolve, the drinkability of the wine. And then also with the whole winemaking process, we're trying to work as elegant as possible with the wines. For me, red wines is all about finesse, freshness. That's also why the 2017 is 12% alcohol. So with all my red wines, it's 12.5 or lower, because at the end of the day, for me, it's all about the acidity, the freshness, the finesse, bringing a lot of that red fruit out. And then also in 2010, I worked in Quartet in France, in the Northern Rhone. And then if you just go a little bit south from Quartet, you get to a place called Hermitage and Cross Hermitage. And I would say that's maybe more in that kind of style where it's peppery, but it's a bit more fresher style, and a bit more on the elegant style, not as dark, and it's not as tartary as normally you can have a lot of times with a lot of Shiraz. So I try to definitely stay away from that spectrum of the Shiraz where it's more big and bold and jammy. And with this one, for me, it's all about freshness, like I say, it's finesse, and it's drinkability. That's also very important. And then I think the tannin is a very important factor when it comes to red wines, because sometimes in South African wines, I feel like if we overdo the tannins, it's almost like it's a kind of like a tired tannin. Where with these wines, I rather pick it a little bit earlier, work with more stems in the wines, in the grapes, and then you get that more kind of like nervous tannin, and that nervous tannin will also help quite a lot with the ageability of the wine. And I think with all of that, if you combine all of that, you will get something that's really fresh and also speaks of the region. But then also at the same time, we talk Swartland, we talk a warm climate region. But I think with the Kolbroek, the nice thing is that when you drink the wine, you would not think it's the warmest climate ever, because there's still that freshness, that lower alcohol, and there's a lot of red fruit in the wine. And I particularly like that in the red wines, and especially the Shiraz. So definitely trying to stay on the more elegant side of the Shiraz with this wine.
It also has an enormously cool label with an enormously cool story. So there is no reason not to go forth and buy plenty of it, especially if that style of red is one that you enjoy. That's not the only wine that you make. Tell us a little about what else is on offer from the Jürgen portfolio.
So then with the white wines, we do the Chenin. We work quite a bit of Chenin. We do a skin contact Chenin, which is called the Elementis. And then we also started about 2 years ago with a Winery skin contact, which is called the Sleeping Co-Pilot. The reason for that was because I had an intern that year, and when we fetched the grapes one morning, he had to keep me awake while I was driving because it's harvest, it's long hours, you're tired. And the next thing when I looked to my left was like the guy's asleep. So I was like, okay, cool. This is pointless having this guy here in the car, trying to keep me awake. So that's where the old name for the sleeping co-pilot comes from. Then we also do like the pink moustache, which is a very, very light red. We do like 2-3 days extraction on the skins. And then I've also started playing around with pinotage. The pinotage is called Halagasha. And then we do the Intellego Shiraz and the Kolbroek. So we're basically trying to work with Winery, Chenin Blanc, Shiraz, Cinsault, Mourvèdre, Pinotage. So definitely more your Mediterranean varietals, because we adapt to the climate. So my whole philosophy and theory is that we're in the Swartland here where it's a warm climate region. And that's why we will work with these grapes, because they adapt the best here. And also they can be very expressive in this climate. It would be senseless for me to work with Cabernet Sauvignon or Sauvignon Blanc in this warm climate, this warm region. So it's a case of adapting to the conditions, and it's the same with the farming and everything. And then at the end of the day, what we have in bottle is a celebration of what happened in the vineyards, and how the climate were that season and how it played along. So that's why vintage variation is also very, very cool. And we talked in the beginning about the 2020 vintage. We talked about 19. So that's a nice thing about having vintage variation in wines. And I think it's also very expressive. So the grapes that we work with, are very expressive in these conditions, and that's why we've chose them. But like I also say, they work very well in this climate. So that's a big reason why we work with all these varietals.
Climate has been a regular point of conversation during our Swartland journey over the last few weeks. And the word Mediterranean has come up many times. I'm particularly excited about seeing fields of Assyrtiko pop up, and I'll be able to bring my Greek wife down to try some wine from her part of the world. Speaking of coming down to your part of the world, before we let you go, Jürgen, and head off to your next engagement, we've met some wonderful winemakers, some terrific people, drunk some sensational wine. I think a Swartland pilgrimage is on the list of just about any wine drinker, whether in South Africa or elsewhere in the world. Give us something away from the wine, somewhere in the Swartland, some beautiful place, some fabulous restaurant, some secret gem in the Swartland that we should put on that list when we come down to visit you and drink your wine, but also explore a part of the world that you call home.
Well, this one is actually on the border of the Swartland if you go up north, and it's actually very close to Craig Hawkins. I don't know if he mentioned it, but if you go up the Pietermaritzkloof Pass, there's a little restaurant called Hebron. And they do amazing food, and you can take your own wines there and stuff. And it's just a great setting. And these are just one of the places where some of these local people have, they went out there and, to be creative and, whether it's accommodation or whether it's the restaurant and stuff. So I always have great memories, good fun going up Hebron. It's almost like you're just moving a bit further away from the rush, from the city life and everything. Because Malmesbury has got 35,000 people, so it's quite a lot. And up there, it's just almost like just you and nature at a higher altitude, and with all this great food and stuff, and just relaxing and switching off. So I think Hebron is definitely really a great place. It's a small little place, but the food is amazing, and the people, the hospitality, everything is great there. So I'm always looking forward going there. And that's also sometimes en route to my surf trip, so it works well.
I'm not sure there's anybody in the Swartland who doesn't go surfing when they're supposed to be making wine. Jürgen, I'll put Hebron straight onto my list. I love the fact that you're trying to escape a town of 35,000 people. I'm trying to escape 1 million people to come down to the solitude of 35,000. But either way, excited to get down there, but also to just drink some more of your wine. Kolbroek is a wine I haven't spent as much time with as I should, but as the endorsements of so many people have made clear, it's fabulous stuff. Keep making great wine, keep having fun doing it, sell it as soon as we can, and thanks very much for joining us this evening, Jürgen.
Thanks a lot, Dan. Appreciate it. And thank you very much for the time, and hope everybody enjoy the Kolbroek and have a nice time, and bite net fast. COVID is almost over.
Very good evening. Welcome to Dan 99 Time. Oh, there we go. Vim, okay. Good evening.
Hi, how are you?
Very well indeed. So if you're watching this and you're thinking, gee, Vim's house and Jürgen's house look really, really similar. Well, there's actually a reason for that. Jürgen jumped onto his horse and went dashing down to go and see his mate Wim, as they could share the laptop and the internet connection, because there's no power in Malmesbury, and so we have them in the same location and able to finish off on a high note. Wim, a very warm welcome. Lovely to see you. Thank you for joining us. We've got your Renosterbos, and we're going to be trying that in a moment, the Hof Street Winery. Give us a little history of this brand and whether you actually do have a winery on Hof Street.
Okay, it all started in just before 2000, where everybody thought it was going to be the end of the world. And then I was also one of those guys who said one day I want to make wine. And then I decided, well, the year 2000, if it happens, I will definitely go and I'm going to make wine. So we got a couple of friends together on a Saturday. We went out to a farm in Malmesbury. We went and we cut the grapes. We went back to the house. I was at that stage, I was living in Hof Street, on the corner of Hof Street and Rainier Street. So we destalked and we by hand, and we made one vat of wine, and then it came out quite well. And then we decided to do it better, well, not better, but to try and do it properly, to also certify it. So the next year I went to this institution or service, which is and I went to them and I said to the guy, listen, I want to make wine. And then he said to me, okay, what's the name of the cellar? And then I thought that was going to be the last question. And then I decided, okay, split the street and Hof Street cellar, because we were in Hof Street. So that is where we all started off. Well, that was 2002.
I'm always fascinated by people who make this decision to make wine. We've had some great guests. I look at Andrew Whiteman, the engineer.
Yes.
I look at the Argentinian wine farmer who finished off his business over in Argentina, now has Nativo, Mr. Hughes.
Yes.
What were you doing at the point when you decided that making wine is something you'd like to do?
Yeah, I'm also in the construction industry, and yeah, in fact, I'm still in the construction industry. So the wine making is actually just a hobby and a big passion of myself, my family, and friends. So when we started off, the family and the friends did everything. Well, we didn't go in a harvest anymore. Then I started to look for certain farmers who will be available to cut a little bit of wine or grapes for us, because that's always a big problem. These small guys, we just want half a ton, because we make half a ton per cultivar. So yeah, then I went out and I identified a couple of farmers, and that's where we started. And we just make varietals, single varietals, and only one 300-liter vat, which is about 400 bottles per cultivar.
I always feel a little guilty, Wim, because you were enormously generous. You sent 4 bottles of your wine up. That's like 10% of your entire production. So thank you for that. It's an extraordinary operation you've got. And we're going to be trying 3 of those bottles in just a moment. But the first one is one we're not trying. And that is this one, the Myrtledeen, which has got a really, really cool name to it, really cool look. Give me the story of the Myrtledeen, which is your one blend.
Yes. Okay. Yeah, about 10 years ago, I moved from Hof Street, where I lived in Malmesbury, to a small holding, which is basically in Malmesbury. It's about, yeah, it's 1 hectare. In 4 years after we moved in here, I built a little cellar here. And this place was called, the house on the small holding was called Myrtledeen. Obviously, people who might not know, but a myrtle is a type of hedge, and dean is a pathway. So that is called Myrtledeen. And then I thought, to make a blend, I will just call it Myrtledeen because I got 2 daughters, and to name a blend to one of them will not be fair. And the blend is basically more of a cellar blend. When I do a certain varietal, when there's wine left, I'll put it in a barrel, just record how much it is, and I filled up this barrel, and roughly it worked out like 39% Shiraz, 39% Cabernet, and then what's left, 22% of Pinotage. But the people actually enjoyed this one because it was an easy drinking, nice wine. It was one of my favorites when I had some.
Well, unfortunately, I can't tell you what it tastes like today because we're going to hang on to this and I'm going to savor it. But I'll certainly put up on social media once I've tried it. What we do have, though, are 3 wines from your selection. And the first of those is the Cabernet Sauvignon, the 2017 Cabernet Sauvignon. We've just been chatting to Jurgen about his range of wines, and there's a lot of Mediterranean influence in the Swartland at the moment. The elegant, the slightly lighter style of red. Cabernet Sauvignon's generally got a slightly bigger pair of shoulders on it. Dare I suggest that Cabernet Sauvignon possibly leans towards one of the grapes you have a personal interest in?
Yeah, it's always a favorite of a lot of people, and for me, it's a bolder, it's a heavier wine. Why we started off with the Cabernet was that, and that started off with our local church. That I went to them and I said to them, "Listen, can't I make a vat of wine for the church?" And then the one farmer said, a wine grower said, "Well, you will give the grapes." And we started off doing one vat for the church, which we bottled at that specific year, and we launched it at the cellar, and all the proceeds went to the church. And then the next year, there was another producer who said, "But you will also give some wine that we can make for the church." But then I decided, and I spoke to him, I said, "Okay, I'll rather have it on one of my own cultivars and not on the church label." So for me, the Swartland and also the specific block of vineyard comes from, it's a very good, it's deep red soils, so it's also unirrigated, so it's a very good area, I think, for Cabernet, and the fruit is good that comes from there, and the result, I think, is also very good.
I would firmly agree with you. I've had my first taste. I'll have a second one just to be sure, because we're very scientific on Dan Really Likes Wine. Now, I'm a huge Cabernet Sauvignon fan, and this is another reminder that Cabernet Sauvignon is not just the preserve of Stellenbosch. It's got lovely smokiness, a little bit of mint. And I have to say, Wim, if this is the wine that you are serving at your church, I would like to join your church and come to communion twice a day. I'm suddenly feeling very religious. You've converted me, Wim.
Okay, no, good.
That is more seriously, it is a lovely wine, and I think probably going to get lovelier 2017 now. It's definitely got some time to go, so that's the first of them to try. Just before we try the second one, a couple of people watching. I see George Engelbert from Distel is busy watching. George, lovely to see you tuned in there. Helen Nichol watching from Belfast in Northern Ireland, and the notorious Ugandan wine drinker Priscilla Lutalo from London. I think that's where she's based at the moment. So nice to see some international people tuning in via the Dan Really Likes Wine cellar to the heart of Malmesbury, where we find ourselves with the Renosterbos. Just before we try the second of these, which is the Shiraz Renosterbos, for those people who aren't familiar, what is it and why is it on the label?
Okay, Renosterbos, I think it was in the 1780s or somewhere there. They sent a search party from the Cape Town inland to go and see what's happening there. So when they got to this area, when these people came back to the Cape, they went basically up to Riebeek Kasteelberg, or mountain. When they came back, they said they saw this Swartland, which means black land, and it was because of the Renosterbos that was growing all over the place. Nowadays, agriculture took over a lot of the Renosterbos. So there's about 5% of the Renosterbos, original Renosterbos area still intact. So when we wanted to look for a brand to name our wine, yeah, you think names is easy, but till you start to look for wines and or names, and then you will think a lot of people thought about it before. So the Renosterbos was actually a register in the 60s already, Renosterbos, for a wine. But then we had the name already. We couldn't register it. But we thought, well, if somebody wants to take back their name, then it will be good publicity. But up till now, nobody challenged us on this one.
Well, let's hope whoever registered it is not watching Dan Really Likes Wine at the moment. But even if they are, I think I'd be very happy with what Renosterbos has become. Certainly in the case of the first one. Having a crack at the second one, and again, speaks to points we made during the conversation with Jürgen. We tried his Syrah. We're seeing a lot of Syrah out of the Swartland. Shiraz is the slightly heavier, slightly more muscular style, maybe not quite so much, but again, something I'm sure that appealed to you as it does to so many others.
Yeah, look, the Shiraz is actually my favorite. Well, at some stage when I started off, it was definitely my favorite, and that's why the first wines that we actually made was just Shiraz. Or Shiraz that we picked from the farmer just outside Malmesbury. It's yeah, Shiraz. The Swartland gets very hot, and it's definitely a wine that can withstand the heat and everything that comes with the Swartland. So and it also, if it's your favorite, I love to have a Shiraz, and yeah, so it's one of the wines that I always serve my guests.
And I guess if you decide, well, as a side project, when I'm not building stuff, I'm going to make wine that I want in small quantities that I can direct entirely, you might as well make your very favorite grape.
Yeah. No, Shiraz, it's well, it's still one of my favorites. There's another, it's we can talk about now. There's one or two other varietals that I also make now. That the one is going to be the Barbera later on, but one that I actually started to love now, which I also started to make, is a Nebbiolo. But we can talk about that a bit later if we have time.
I'm sure we can squeeze it in. There is a touch of the Nebbiolo in that Myrtledeen blend, which I'm very excited about trying. Maybe this coming weekend might be good for some of that Myrtledeen. The Shiraz is also lovely, like the Cabernet Sauvignon. It's got a nice, big, full-bodied feel to it. I'm thoroughly enjoying it, especially as it's still fairly chilly up here in Johannesburg. 2 down, 1 to go in terms of what we're actually drinking. And this is the slightly more unusual one in terms of grapes we see a lot of. A single varietal Barbera. It's not a regular fixture on the South African winemaking scene. What drew you into that, Wim?
Well, one of it was, I was looking for something different. And then there was a farmer in the Paardeberg. I spoke to him, and he said he got Barbera. And then at that stage, the only other place that I know that had Barbera as a single varietal was Altyd Gedacht. I went and bought some, and yeah, I actually loved the wines. And then I got a half a ton from a friend in the Paardeberg, and I started to do Barbera. And Barbera is a cultivar which is very high, naturally very high in acid. And in the Swartland, one of the big lack of is, especially when it's very hot, is acid in wine. And even with high temperatures and stuff, Barbera always have high acid. So that is a fantastic wine to make and to grow, a grape to grow in the Swartland because of the acids, especially without the fact that we want to make wine that tells the story of the terroir, and you don't want to add a lot of acid, or you try to keep away from that. And it's a cultivar which is obviously Italian. It's very big in Italy, and but there's a lot of other farmers producers that also start to do it as single varietals, and very good barrels as well.
All right, well, let's give it a try. You're 2 for 2 so far, Vim, in terms of wines that I've thoroughly enjoyed. So pressure's on you for the full house. A little bit of Italian majesty, given a Swartland enhancement. Oh, that is lovely. So different to the previous two. There's beautiful fruit to that. And if I close my eyes with an Italian grape, I can imagine myself sitting somewhere in the Mediterranean, maybe washing down a pizza or just some Italian fare. And I think that's possibly linked to my fantasies of just going traveling again, which I'm desperate to do. But I think if I was Italian, I'd pick this up, drink this, and think, "Yep, the Swartland has done the Italian grape good. This is lovely, Vim."
Like, last year, I think 2 years ago, I visited Piedmont in Italy, and I must say we did a couple of cellar tours and met people about and which are all very passionate about their wines and winemaking, and I must say I'm very excited about the Barbera for the future, because I think it can be a fantastic wine on its own. And this foods, a lot of people like to do Italian foods. This goes fantastic with higher acid foods like tomato-based foods, lots of meats, high in acid, and so forth. So it's a very nice wine for food.
I also suspect it's the kind of wine where the first glass will go very well with the second glass, which will also complement the third glass quite nicely, and your evening will progress from there. It's also the kind of wine I think we're going to see more and more of in South Africa, and especially the Swartland, as climate starts to play more of an influence on what we can grow and grow successfully. Speaking of the part of the world that you're in, I look behind those broad shoulders of yours, Vim. I see some lovely artwork. Would that be of your home? What is in those paintings?
Well, it's actually not my paintings, but it looks like a vineyard in Italy if I look at that. Unfortunately, it's not mine. I don't have power at my house. It's actually my neighbor's house, which I borrowed for the event.
All right. Well, if your neighbour's not looking, go home with them, because they're lovely. I'm sure they'll look in your house as well. Just before we bid you farewell, Vim, and I go and finish off some lovely Renosterbos. It's been a real treat trying all of this out. The same question that I asked Jürgen before we said goodbye to him. Looking at some wine travel, I'm looking to come down to the Swartland and meet in person all of the vineyards, the people, the winemakers who I've spent time with over the last 6 episodes of Dan Really Likes Wine Live. If I do come down, stepping away from the wine and looking at a restaurant, a place of great beauty, a hidden gem of the Swartland, what should I include in my travel itinerary?
Well, we actually, after COVID, my brother is a qualified chef, and at the cellar at Myrtledeen, we had a small function room, and so he got retrenched during lockdown, and he phoned me, and I said to him, "Listen, I got the opportunity. There's this place here which is quite tranquil. It's about one hectare of property." Nice dam, nice stuff here, and he took the opportunity and he opened a restaurant now. It's opened now for about a month, So I would suggest Cafe Myrtledeen, which is on our premises next to the cellar, part of the cellar, will be a very good place to go.
Well, if it's got your wine and if your brother's food is up with his brother's wine, then I think that's definitely on my list. And probably then the second place on my list, because I think top of the list is coming to your church to come and get some communion. I'm very keen on that. Sounds like a terrific idea. Vim, you have the honor, I think it's an honor, of wrapping up our trip to the Swartland, because we now complete 6 shows that we've done live with different winemakers and wine people from the Swartland. And I think it's been a really, really nice way to finish. A couple of wines and a Cabernet Sauvignon and a Shiraz that we haven't had out of the Swartland, but a dry Mediterranean Barbera to finish things off. So thanks for introducing your wine. Thanks for sharing your passion with us. And thanks for sharing 4 entire bottles. You make so little. I almost feel like I should package some of it up and send it back to you. But I won't, because I like it too much. So I'm afraid it's stuck. But thank you so much. Keep making great wine and good luck with the journey. I'm sure there's a lot more still to unfold with the Renosterbos range.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, thank you for having us, and thank you for from the Swartland, somebody from the Swartland that's so passionate about, and you that is so passionate about our area, and we would like to invite you to come here. And as Jurgen also said earlier, you know, everybody, if we received visitors from overseas, they can't believe that winemakers from the same area talk to each other. I believe in France and other places, they enemies, and yeah, everybody helps each other. And from that, we just do something that's bigger and better. But thank you very much for the opportunity.
No, thank you. And I think that's a perfect way to close. Speaking to that kinship and that camaraderie that you do have, there's a wonderful friendship and a wonderful sense of Ubuntu, I think is a pretty good South African word that describes the people of the Swartland. And it is the kind of approach that we really need more of in South Africa, in the world, being kind to each other, being nice to each other, doing things because they're the right thing to do, not because it affects the bottom line or it affects a particular point of view. And our time with the Swartland has done more than just give us some wonderful wine. It's given us some wonderful people. And it's only taught me a few lessons beyond just what arrives in a bottle in the Dan Really Likes Wine cellar. So a massive thank you, particularly to Kali Lowe, who orchestrated all of this and did a fabulous, fabulous job. Kali, bye donkey for putting all of that together. And to all of my friends from the Swartland, some of them I've known for a while, others are a little newer. I can't wait to be down to see all of you and drink some wine with you, and possibly from this weekend or early next week, if those level 2 rumors are true. We can't come soon enough. On the prediction that they are, you'll be needing to restock those cellars. Make sure you're a member of the Pick and Pay Wine Club, absolutely free of charge, 3 times the smart shopper points, and some fabulous, fabulous deals on wine across the Pick and Pay range, including 10 each month. You get 20% off, adding to the allure of getting some great South African wine down at Pick and Pay. So next week is really, really important. Tuesday. I know you've got it in your diary already, but I'll remind you just in case. It is International Pinot Noir Day. Now, we don't have a show on a Tuesday, but we do on a Monday, so it's perfect preparation. On Monday evening, we'll be speaking to Peter Finlayson, the godfather of South African Pinot Noir, and trying some of the Beauchard Finlayson Pinot Noir. And we'll be heading right next door, where Anthony and Olive Hamilton Russell, who make, yes, you guessed it, Hamilton Russell, will be drinking, yes, you guessed it again, some Pinot Noir with me. We'll be trying their 2016 vintage and celebrating the very best of the Hemel and Ardagh Valley. Also, look out next week for a very special interview with Matt Manning and Alex Dale from Grub and Vine and Radford Dale, respectively, as we celebrate the Restaurant Rescue Project, doing terrific job to try and keep some of our top restaurants and their many, many employees above water and going until the world rights itself to some degree or other. That's it for Dan Really Likes Wine with Pick and Pay this week. Thank you so much for joining us. Massive, massive thank you to Wim Smit from Renosterbos and the Hof Street Winery. Very small scale, so do your best to find his wine. Join his church, probably the best plan. And also a big thank you to Mr. Host a little earlier on for trying his Intellego and that Kolbroek Syrah. Take care of yourself, have a wonderful weekend, and we'll see you back with Pinot Noir on Monday night. Goodbye.